London. This would have been 1970, September 1970. Kath came up with me to sort out accommodation. I'd sorted out the course, I'd sorted out the college, and I'd sorted out accommodation, I'd sorted out my grant, and I was going to stay in what I thought was a very nice accommodation, the International Students' Club in Sussex Gardens, just around the corner from Paddington Station. Lancaster Gate Hotel is built just in front of it. And I came up with Kath for a couple of days, just to have a look at it, to see if it was suitable for Mr. Pick's son to go to college. So both of us came up, went in the door and loved it. 200 people in there, I suppose about 200, from all around the world, and 5%, so there were 10 of us, were white English. The rest were from right round the world. So came up with Kath, had a nice day, went round all the shops, went to the accommodation, confirmed it, booked it, and said yes please. Because they wanted to interview me to make sure I was suitable. Our role as the 10 English there was to be on hand if any foreigner needed to have English explained, help them with their English homework, work, and generally culturally what it was to be English. So spent the day with Kath, then we went back, and in the September up I went. Packed my suitcase, got on the train. Kath and Ben were at the station, and apparently were very disappointed afterwards that I hardly looked back to wave them goodbye. I waved them goodbye, and they were a bit upset that I wasn't tearful that I was leaving home. But for me, I was off. I was onwards and upwards to London. So I got to Paddington Station. I had no idea where Paddington Station was. So came out and got a cab. Got a cab to Sussex Gardens. And later on, that's a huge joke, because it's about 100 yards just round the corner. The taxi driver must have thought, this is an idiot. So took my money and went the long way round, I think by Marble Arch, and then dropped me back off at just round the corner from Paddington. The advice my father had given me before leaving home, because he'd lived in Belsize Park all that time ago, was being a student in London and being a white student from a well-to-do family, there would be women waiting at the door to take money off me. And I should be careful of the women of the night. That was the advice from my father as I left Devon to go to London. So I'm in the Students' Club. I'm in the front room on the front of Sussex Gardens. It's still there. It's 3 windows across, those tall windows across, with the big balcony on top of pillars. One of those big white terrace buildings. The room is divided into 4, split level. So there are 2 beds either side at the bottom and 2 up on the top, just under the ceiling. So, because the rooms are about 15, 20 feet tall, so I've just got enough room to stand, and it's divided into 2. There's Ahmed downstairs, I can't remember what the others were called, but within a couple of days, all food was in, breakfast, lunch, dinner. If you were there for lunch, you had lunch, but breakfast and dinner was all included, and built-in company. So very quickly I was friends with a chap called Umber Baksh, who came from, somewhere in Africa. Tim Raquel, who was white English, one of the other English people, and Rod, who was Ugandan Asian. And we had quite a social life. I didn't know your mother then, but she was there. She was one of the other English. But she was one of the respectable English there. I used to pad around, no shoes, because in Devon we didn't used to wear shoes, my rugby shirt and a pair of old jeans. And I went to college a little bit to begin with. You had to register and whatever, but I went a little bit. Within I suppose a couple of weeks, Umber had a girlfriend called, I can't remember her name is now, she lived in Hampton, white English. So we would be out at parties, 3 or 4 of us, Tim, Umber, Rod and I and some others, day in, day out. And I first met your mother because we were at the same college. We were both doing law at the same college. She was a year ahead of me. Because of this year, I'd buggered up because of the art college. And I would be crawling in the morning, about 8, 9 o'clock, half drunk with some of the others, as she was pristine as she is now, going off to college with her notes in her bag, having studied all evening, and she'd look at me as this most disreputable drunk coming in, and then very occasionally I would come in a bit earlier, about 7, rush up to my room, get my notes and get back, and we would meet on the tube, and I would be there, you know, still hungover from the night before, and she'd be sitting there saying, "Oh, what lectures have you got today?" And I say, "Oh God, I don't know, I can't think about it till I get there." And that's how we met, and we went on tubes for weeks, and then your mum was asked to put on a dance at the Students' Club. She'd already been there for a year, and she knew some of the people there, Mona and some other people there, and she was asked to put on a special English dance. It could have been May Day, I don't know, but some English festival, and she needed help putting it on, organising it, so she said, would I mind helping? So I said, of course not, I'll help you. So we organised a discotheque with ribbons and papers and whatever, and it was brilliant too. And we got to know each other, and then we would travel. She sort of rehabilitated me, I suppose is the way to describe it, because she was so conscientious. You know, always at lectures, everything was done immaculately. I've done some work, I've done it. If I hadn't, I don't care. If I went to college, you know, I didn't care. I was away from Devon in London and having a fantastic time. But she was very respectable. You know, why are you doing this? Why aren't you studying hard? And I said, I was in London, so give a shit. So then there was an arts festival on in the college, and I said, there's a film tonight which is very interesting. I said, it hasn't been shown in England since about 1935. Would you like to go? And she said, oh yes, that'd be lovely. So it was Freaks, which is a black and white film noir from about 1927 or whatever, and it's a creepy film about a group of circus freaks, and someone makes fun of them. So in the end, they chop him up, and this person becomes a freak in the show with them, and it's a very strange film. So we went to see this. That was at part of the college in Regent Street. So we then had to get back from Regent Street to Earl's Court. We didn't have any money. Neither of us had any money. We only had our grant, and that had to pay for books and alcohol. So we would walk back. So down into Oxford Street, along Oxford Street, straight the way down Bayswater Road home. Took us about an hour, but we would just wander home. And that's how we got to know each other. And we would then go out quite regularly. And then I found the Opera House, and I would queue up and book a season's operas, 6 or 7 operas in the Gods, up in the amphitheatre, because it was very cheap there. A main ticket would cost you 30, 40 quid even then, so I was paying £5, £6 to go up in the Gods. And your mum would come with me. Very game. No, her family had nothing to do with operas or anything like that, but very, very game, and we got to know each other really well and started to go out. We became a couple. Umber and his girlfriend became a couple. Tim found a girl. Oh yeah, she was a pain. Rod found Teresa, who was Polish, and we used to go out as a group of 7 or 8 all the time, everywhere, all over London, parties, drugs. We never ever took drugs. wasn't part of our scene. We were at law college studying law. So the Nigerians used to turn up in suits every day. I would just be like this. But the Nigerians turned up in suits, a lot of Jewish people. And of course drugs was just not part of the legal side. But we used to go to parties where drugs were being taken all the time, particularly pot. And just the smoke alone. Jane, that was her name. Who was going out with Jane? It must have been Tim. She ran the cafeteria in the students' club. So we'd go to parties and Marilyn's thick smoke as you walked into a flat in somewhere in Camden in North London. It would just be thick cannabis smoke, and of course you'd get high just by being there. So that was our life. Then you could only stay in the International Students Club for 2 years. Well, your mum had been there for a year before I came. So at the end of the year when we were in Iton, we said, well, where else are we going to go? We had to be out because your mum had to be out. So then we moved with a whole group of people to a place in Earls called Lee Abbey, which was another International Students Club. And again, very few percentage of whites. A lot of the Asians there were already working. They were no longer students, but they just used to show their student visa. Lots of them were accountants and whatever. So we all just moved in en masse. 20 or 30 of us just moved from Sussex Gardens into the Abbey and just carried on our lives as we had before. That's all around Courtfield Road, Courtfield Gardens, just back from Earls Court. And your mum and I carried on going to college and, you know, living together in my room or her room, just as normal. Each year we had to study 4 subjects, and again, I wouldn't produce any written work. All I did was bullet points. So I would lose a tiny percentage of my marks for lack of presentation, but I would always get all the points that were needed. So each year I passed all my exams extremely well. And it's a bit like you with your bits at college, that each bit added up to your degree at the end. Your mum failed, in fact, a couple of her exams in her second year, so she would come and stay with me in Devon during the summer holidays, and she would come down and stay all the summer holidays in Devon, and every day we'd catch the train to Exeter, where she would study in University of Exeter or in the library in Exeter, and I would just wander around and read and just keep her amused. And then she resat in September, passed all of those. So 3 years later, the last year for both of us, nobody went into college much for the last year. One of the subjects was jurisprudence, which was very, very difficult, and the lecturer was very poor. So what we did was, we didn't go into college. What we did was we went to Senate House, which is the big Art Deco building in Russell Square, where we all met up, about 20 of us, and we taught each other. We had the textbooks, we had all the exam papers, and we just worked through the subjects as were required. A group of us would go off in the morning, study, then everyone would meet up at lunchtime to say, right, we're all studying the same stuff, what have you all got out? And we would vie for, you know, footnotes, glossary notes, and it was a fantastic time. It was the first time ever that, for example, in something like criminal law, instead of being a linear progression with side roads off, so you're studying criminal law with theft, with burglary, with whatever, as a long line, it all curved round and joined up into a sphere. So you saw how every piece connected with every other piece. And you could hold this sphere in your mind and look at any crime from lots of different angles. First time this had ever happened to me, that I knew the subject so well. And that happened with jurisprudence, criminal law, evidence, that we could play with it. There were half a dozen of us who were really up on our subjects, and we could really play, which is, I've never had that before. And most of us did really well, so we all came out with brilliant degrees. So that was the end of our academic time. Your mum got a 2-2, I got a 2-1, and we then had to go to our various ceremonies. Your mum's awards ceremony was in St Paul's, followed by a presentation ceremony in the Albert Hall. She had all her gown, but she didn't have a mortarboard. Your mum couldn't have a mortarboard. She had to have a flat cap like a handkerchief on her head. And Doris was there, and we all had pictures taken outside with the Albert Memorial. Mine was at Westminster Abbey, and then at the big place. And in each time, the Queen Mother was the rector of the university, so it was the Queen Mother who awarded our degrees at the Albert Hall. We were told we weren't to speak to the Queen Mother. She would be gloved. We were not under any circumstances to squeeze her hand, because she had, 1,000 people to give awards to. So all we had to do was raise our hand out, and she would put hers on top and just give a little shake, and then she would hand us our degrees, and then off we would go. So again, pictures outside. So an exciting time, 1973, and then of course we went off to work.